I'm thrilled to be introducing the latest in our video series as we interview Zach Keating, who's VP at Torch Communications. Like us, Torch is a small boutique PR agency with offices in Boston, New York, as well as San Francisco. Here we chat to Zach about differences in UK versus US media, what makes a good story, targeting tech publications, and so much more. Hope you enjoy.
Hi, my name's Zach Keating. I'm a vice president with Torch Communications out of our San Francisco office. I primarily work in advanced technology, as well as crisis communications and venture capital. Torch Communications is a small boutique shop. We have offices in both Boston and New York, as well as San Francisco. And we handle everything from healthcare to data management and client solutions. So when you choose a location for your US operations, it really depends on what your goals as an organization are. So notionally, the Bay Area has an abundance of venture capital. New York is a national media hub and advertising. Boston is a lot of research as well as academics, and LA is really in the film and TV as well as some advertising. Each can fit different goals, but it really depends on where you're headed and how each of those cities and their support structure can support your growth. The best part about the media, specifically in tech press, is that most are location agnostic. Really, if you're doing unique work and can tell a compelling story, the location is really less important, and actually can be an asset if you choose a austere place or a non-popular place. One thing that I always go back to is a book by a popular technologist named Peter Thiel, who put in the quote that competition is for losers. Now, his point was always to push towards something that you can monopolize as a company, but this is also in terms of not being in a competitive area. So my advice is to find a place where competition is really light in your space. For example, if you're a deep learning AI startup, you're probably going to be one of about 1,000 in the Bay Area. However, if places like Chicago, you're going to be less likely to find competitors, and you're going to have much more open media landscape, and there's much less competition for talent, media coverage, as well as fundraising and any other business goals you might have. Sorry. For years, tech employees have always been focused on quality of life. They've enjoyed these large campuses, free meals, kombucha at every corner, and really those big office perks that offset their living expenses and places like San Francisco and LA and New York. Post-COVID, I think this is going to change quite a bit as companies are going to have to focus more on supporting their employees' abilities to live and work remotely. The cost of living and non-office quality of life will really need to be considered now more than ever before. And places like San Francisco and LA are seeing these massive exoduses of tech employees into places like Idaho and Montana that have way less people and are just cost less. So companies really need to be as flexible as they can moving forward, because I think we're learning on the go here that office gyms and gourmet lunches really just aren't worth what they used to be to employees. Now, in terms of geographical differences, like you said, Boston and New York are culturally very different towns, but really they're very different in the services and support structure that they offer. For example, Boston is an academic hub with hundreds and hundreds of universities and colleges, and is a great place for recruiting graduates from top schools and finding that talent that you really need to grow your business. New York, obviously has some great schools as well, but really what New York is known for is having, some of the best professional services that you can find. Things like marketing, advertising, legal services, accounting, and it's where so many professional services companies have their headquarters. And it's really where those companies bring their top talent of mid-career, mid-senior career professionals to kind of continue to drive that top level of business for you. So So notionally, they're very different, but they're different in what they can offer you. And my advice would be to find what you really need to grow your business and take it to the next level, and that can maybe make the decision for you. I don't think it matters. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that I don't think that location really matters anywhere near what it did, 8 months ago. I think that the quicker you are able to find somebody that understands what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and is on board is the most important piece. If you try to look for the perfect fit and narrow yourself down to one town or two towns, you're not getting the full breadth of what you could probably get. I think that you're missing out on all of these great places that are around the country that can still do the same things, but really your fit should be who you enjoy working with, and who really enjoys working with you. And if you can find that in Des Moines, Iowa, then great. I mean, I think that that's what you have to do. And I think in this new world, you have to be creative and flexible. And it's the only way you're going to continue to grow in an environment like this. So what types of news does the media want? It's one word. It's news. They want something that is newsworthy. So biggest, best, first, founding stories, scandals, conspiracies, founder profiles, things like that actually drive news and have interest. I say that because so many companies have a hard time being self-aware in what is actually news. Your major business milestones are great, but many of them are really just not newsworthy. So it's really important to understand the difference between what's news for you and what's news for everyone. So really, what the press wants out of a spokesperson is to be a liaison. And really, they don't want to hear from the PR folks. They just want you to be able to connect them to a leader or a subject matter expert that can have a thoughtful conversation and have everything set up and then just get out of the way. They want you to have your executives prepared, not coached, which are two very different things. And they want you to provide them someone who is honest and can answer questions openly, and really, be able to give an earnest interview that makes them sound like a expert, but more importantly, a human. And that's the difference between prepared and coached. So one example of this, we write PR briefing materials all the time. One thing that I tell executives to do is to rewrite them, to make it sound like it's actually them talking, not a PR, person talking through them. So finding your own voice and being able to create your own voice is a really important piece of this. So when organizations are looking to develop relationships with media, self-awareness should be the biggest aspect of your relationship. You really want to understand who you're pitching a story to and why they would be interested in that story. And you really want to make sure that it holds up for a broader audience. One way that I do that is I ask my mom. I ask her if she finds a story interesting or compelling or doesn't get it or want to learn more. And if she doesn't, I already know that it's going to be a very tough sell on a reporter. Another piece is you just don't want to be cagey. It sounds like you're hiding something. There's been a really strong move, especially from US tech companies, to doing regular interviews, either off the record or on background. And it's become kind of the norm. And I think one way to stamp yourself different and unique is to not do that. Find a way to stay on the record and just bridge out of questions that you don't want to answer or not ready to answer or don't want to answer in a public forum. And don't just respond with I can't comment on that. And another piece to that is going into any interview that you book and are doing with a goal of sharing something that is news. People want news. They want to be able to write something that is important and impactful and timely. And if you're able to share something that fits the criteria of news, your relationship will be that much better from the start. So I had a client who was preparing for their first live Zoom interview, major media outlet that was going to happen the next day. Scheduled a prep session with him the night before. Was very excited about it. Ended up canceling a few times and told us he was fine. Was really mostly concerned with the background elements of his room. And he told us in confidence that he was really concerned about the order of books behind him to make sure that they were in a good order and were done correctly and looked great on camera. Turns out when you do that, you forget to practice your answers, but you also don't really care about the lighting or the sound. So after preparing all of his books and making sure they were in the right order, he didn't have himself lit well, so you couldn't even see the books. And turns out he didn't give the answers that he needed to give, and we could barely hear him because he didn't care about the sound either. So know what you're doing and know what you're getting into before you start doing an interview, and realize that the important thing is you and nothing else. The biggest advice I can give with new companies entering the US media market is that engagement really has to go both ways. US tech companies have become really distrustful of the press. And some of the calls that I've been on have felt like hostage negotiations or standoffs with lots of no comments and asking for off the records with no real reason for going off the record or not commenting. You really need to find ways to share and engage and be able to give them something to use. And then you're going to be able to build a relationship that's based in trust and doesn't have that standoff nature. My other big piece of advice is, quite honestly, be yourself. Earnest conversations are always a way to endear yourself to someone, and that includes reporters. Be confident in the news you have to share, but really try to humanize yourself and humanize your company and make sure that people understand that you are a person working for a company with something that you really believe in. If you are earnest and honest in that way, you're going to find your interactions with US press that much easier.